Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, before the end of last year, took us all by surprise and garnered one of our highest reviews on the site to this day. Now, with it being 2016, can The Division match our expectations? Let's find out in our review of Tom Clancy's The Division. The setup to The Division is pretty simple. New York has become the victim to an epidemic after the spread of the dollar bill virus. Planted on Black Friday, the virus spread to everyone in the city, causing most of the population to fall incredibly ill and others to die. Three rival factions then stood up to try and take hold of the city for their own ideals, including the Rikers, the Cleaners, and the Rioters. Now The Division has awoken alongside the JTF to try and combat these factions and bring back New York City. The story here is crafted to capitalize on realism, whilst the gameplay, with its unrealistic gun damage, parts itself from the realism entirely. This creates a very strange mold, and it does make things confusing as you do progress. Although it does allow the game to have some humour inside of the serious quest lines and plot developments, relieving the tension in what would be a very dark and dreary experience otherwise, it does take away from the serious impact of the virus and how tragic this event has been for the citizens of the city. The plot itself also carries along at a snail's pace, with missions only extending the problems further. As well as that, you will go out and complete major story quests, not to be rewarded with more plot development, but be rewarded with a piece of intel or a shred of CCTV footage that lets you immerse yourself into the world more, which is okay, but it's nothing in comparison to a fully character-driven cutscene to flesh out the plot that little bit more. You never feel as if you're truly impacting anything in New York City. And speaking of the characters that you meet up with and you interact with, none of them are memorable and are very easy to throw away. Even the side quest characters don't hold any merits and just have a slightly different personality in comparison to the last. When it comes to customization, you have your base of operations consisting of 3 wings: medical, tech, and security, to manage and upgrade. Each wing will provide you with rewards towards abilities, perks, and passive improvements as you upgrade them. As you explore the many districts of New York, you'll be going on major story-driven missions representing these 3 wings, but as well as that, also committing to side quests through the safe houses and events that randomly pop up throughout the districts that reward you with vital points towards these wings as well. The early game of leveling these things up is really fun, but the only problem is that when you get to the late game and you've maxed out these trees, the base of operations really doesn't hold much merit to you anymore. The only reason why you would go back is to switch out stuff in your stash, use the crafting workbench in order to craft yourself a new weapon or piece of armor or mod, or head on over to one of the represented wings just to pick up some more fabric, pick up some more electronics, or pick up a randomized piece of loot that they've just happened to find after waiting an hour or so of in-game time. It feels a little bit lackluster and underdeveloped, leaving you questioning whether maxed out wings were supposed to allocate you these hard daily challenges for you to accomplish once they're maxed out. The loot system in The Division is all based around RNG, the whole idea of random number generated loot. You kill a guy and there's a random chance that he'll drop something that's common or completely rare. And it's done really well here in comparison to a game kinda like Destiny, where you had RNG on top of RNG on top of RNG to hope you got something half decent. But the loot here is split into 2 different kinds. You have your weaponry and you have your armory. Your weapons and the modifications that you can get for those weapons in loot form feels incredible, whilst that of the armor feels kinda lackluster, because as much as you're getting better stats and better equipment that is going to make you a better player in the long run, you don't look any different. Your character just looks like the same guy with the same jacket, the same vest, the same gloves and the same boots throughout the entire time, with no real customization options. And this is probably the game's biggest drawback. It has a lot of ties to Diablo in how it gives you loot, how it supplies you with the districts, going back to safe houses and bases, to then crafting your own stuff, and that feels great. But then it lacks in what Diablo gives you. Diablo gives you a chance to create your character and see your character develop from lowly traveling necromancer to all of a sudden becoming Lord of the And there's nothing like that in the game. The Division simply has you waking up as a sleeper agent, and by the end of the game, you just feel like a slightly better sleeper agent. Because there's thousands of other agents out there doing the exact same things you are, you don't feel as if you're being impactful. You feel as if you're just one piece of a cog making everything work. The gameplay itself with the cover-to-cover combat is really nice, as it's not going to give you tunnel vision every time you go into cover and want to pop out to shoot some enemies. But even then, the enemy AI here is actually quite smart, as enemies will suppress you, flank you, charge you down when you're in a bad position, and take advantage of the environment around you. This focuses on giving players the chance to keep a lookout on their environment at all times and use it as a weapon against their opponents. If one location isn't helping out and you're getting flanked all the time, move to a different locale, and before you know it, you would have flanked the enemy and they're shooting at where you were. And this gameplay is important to master when you enter the PvP area known as the Dark Zone. This world-based PvP zone for players to explore is great. Not just will you be going against a combination of all three factions that might be having civil wars between each other in the districts, but you're also going to be able to go against other players in order to pick up the best loot the game has to offer. It's only a shame, however, that the Dark Zone has two major faults. The first one is that enemy spawns seem to be really bad, as when you're running around or in the middle of a fight, suddenly enemies will spawn behind you, in front of you, and completely outflank you and outmatch you simply because they just decided to spawn on your position. On top of that, as much as the game's advertising was focused around you going rogue and having all these benefits, going rogue in the Dark Zone doesn't nearly give you as many benefits as hoped. If anything, it's a bad thing going rogue. Every single player on the map will be able to see you as you have a massive target on your back, and AI seem to converge on you in the middle of a firefight instead of other teammates or other players entirely, making you the #1 target out of everyone. Which kind of makes sense if you were to go rogue, but also alienates you and punishes you for effectively wanting better loot. It feels as if it would have been better to have this open world as an option, but then when you're in this open world, to have a matchmaking system where you're able to go into a more traditional objective-based matchup such as a team deathmatch or maybe even a capture the flag style game. The late game of the Division is very lacking, and it just lacks the drive to really push you to keep playing over and over again. As well as that, the lack of enemy variation that's in the game also gives you a lack of really good boss fights. Early on, you'll get really attached to the boss fights and really enjoy them, but then you'll just see them repeated as the game goes on until the final boss fight. Things finally switch up as you go against a fully equipped helicopter. It's bad, however, that this helicopter is made boring with terrible radio chatter from your allies, as well as the helicopter having awful flight patterns and providing no real challenge whatsoever. You're effectively fighting another meat shield that could be guarding another piece of loot or another funky hat. So with the game world seeming interesting and the name of Tom Clancy not really doing too much for the Division, gun loot done really well, but character customization lacking also, with level 30 characters looking exactly like level 3 characters as soon as they hit Manhattan, the Division is quite frankly built for the early game and not for the late game. Yes, patches will be on the way to fix problems and hopefully make things better, but for me in general, the Division has left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. By far, it's not a broken game, and in all honesty, I do prefer it to that of Destiny. But in comparison, it's not nearly as great of a game as I was hoping from E3 of 2013 when we saw the Division for the first time. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to award Tom Clancy's The Division a 6 out of 10. The Division hits the mark with its loot, gameplay and AI difficulty, making a title that you will quickly get addicted to, but the late game elements drop the title below the expectation line, leaving a slightly sour taste in our mouths. With that said, guys, what are your thoughts on The Division? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Or are you still sitting on the fence thinking whether you should purchase it or not. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to see the fully written version of this review where we go more in depth into certain areas, be sure to check that out in the description below. Until next time, we'll be seeing you on the other side.